They disowned me. In front of a lawyer, no warning, no apology, just a signature and silence. What they didn't know was that I had already built something powerful behind their backs. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I bought the house they threw me out of, then turned it into a gallery that told the story they tried to erase. Hi, I'm Sienna. I was the disappointment in the family. Until they realized I wasn't the one who failed Legacy, I redefined it. Have you ever been pushed out by the people who were supposed to love you most? What would you do if the ones who erased you had to walk through your truth on display? I didn't need a calendar reminder. The text came in plain as ice. Family meeting, 7 p.m., don't be late. No, hi. No, how are you? Just orders, like always. I arrived at 6:58, 2 minutes early, but the door opened before I even raised my hand to knock. You're late, my father said, arms folded across the same chest that used to carry me when I was 5. In this house, early is already late. I didn't answer, just stepped past him into the foyer. The scent inside was the same, lemon polish, old mahogany, but the warmth was gone. The Morgan estate always had a chill to it, but tonight it cut deeper, like the walls knew what was coming. The living room had been arranged with surgical intent. 3 siblings on one couch, Vanessa, Lena, and Derek, all dressed like they'd been told this was a formal affair. Mom sat off to the side near the fireplace, hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a church sermon to start. And then there was the lawyer perched beside Vanessa, folder already open. Wendy Strauss, I'd later learn. Hired hands rarely make eye contact when they know they're delivering a blow. Take a seat, Dad said. One armchair waited across from them, centered, facing the tribunal. I remained standing. What is this? Vanessa didn't bother with small talk. You chose your path, Sienna. We're just making it official. Wendy cleared her throat. This is a formal notice of familial disassociation, effective immediately. The folder slid across the coffee table. My name sat bold and alone on the front page, followed by paragraphs of legal language dressed up in polite cruelty, stripped from the will, frozen out of the trust, disconnected from anything Morgan-shaped. It's not personal, Lena whispered, eyes cast low. Of course it wasn't. That's what they always said when it was personal. I didn't flinch, didn't sigh, didn't blink. Vanessa leaned in, her voice like a smirk. You built a little arts and crafts brand and suddenly you think you deserve a seat at the table? It's not crafts, I replied. It's design. Sustainability-focused, community-driven. Evelyn raised her hand. She didn't speak right away. Her gaze was level, lips pinched. We gave you every opportunity. Tutors, travel, access, and you spent it on a glue gun. That part stung more than it should have. You never asked what I was building, I said. Richard waved it all away. It doesn't matter now. Sign there was a pen already there, waiting like they knew I'd surrender. And maybe they were right. Maybe they thought silence was a sign of defeat, that I'd fold, that I'd beg. Instead, I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. The signature came out clean even. Wendy gave a small nod as she closed the folder. That was her part done. I stood up. Nobody moved. They thought they'd witness a collapse. Maybe a breakdown. But what they got was the stillness of someone who'd already buried the loss long before tonight. At the door, I paused just long enough to speak. You're all so obsessed with legacy, but none of you ever once asked what I made on my own. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Evelyn blinked, just once, but it was enough. I stepped into the cold. The air outside was thin, mountain bright. My car sat at the curb where I'd left it, unbothered. I slipped behind the wheel, closed the door, and let out the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My phone buzzed, a notification, one new sale, custom chandelier, $2,800. I looked at the screen, then out the windshield. The house stood in the background, warm lights glowing behind windows that no longer belonged to me. and I smiled, not out of spite, but because they had no idea that the girl they erased tonight had already walked away a long time ago. I didn't plan to walk past the house. I left the apartment without a real destination. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that hums low in your bones. I needed the air. No keys, no coat, just a sweater and muscle memory pulling me through old streets. It was the kind of afternoon that made everything feel a little quieter. Trees stripped bare, cars idling slowly past. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. And then, like a ghost slipping between familiar turns, I saw it. The Morgan house. It looked different, but not in the way time softens things. It looked staged, as if someone had scrubbed it of memory. The grass was too neat, the shutters too white, even the welcome mat was gone. Then I saw the sign. For sale. Private showings only. My chest pulled tight. They hadn't just disowned me. They were unloading the house before the ink even had time to dry on those papers. I stood across the street, hands buried in my sleeves, and stared. The place where I grew up, where I scraped my knees on the stone walkway, where I snuck extra chocolate chips into cookie dough when Evelyn wasn't looking. Gone. Or almost. I pulled out my phone, typed the address into a real estate app, and there it was. New listing. Charming 4-bedroom home. Ideal for entertaining. Photos loaded slowly, each one more jarring than the last. My old bedroom was labeled guest suite. The lavender walls I'd painted junior year were now an off-white gray. The bookshelf I built by hand, gone. The mural above the window, painted over. I kept scrolling. The kitchen. God, the kitchen. I helped remodel it during college. Hand-picked the tile backsplash. Installed the cabinet hardware with Derek one summer when he was still speaking to me. I even carved my initials, SM, into the baseboard behind the pantry. But now it was beige, sterile, the kind of kitchen you see in a dentist's waiting room brochure. In one photo, the family was pictured in Aspen. Same trip I remembered so clearly, only this time I wasn't in the frame. My red coat, my crooked grin, my spot in the middle, gone. I blinked, stared harder. They hadn't just replaced me, they'd erased me. The kind of erasure that isn't just cruel, it's deliberate. It says, you were never here. You never mattered. I took a deep breath, thumb hovering over the phone. Then I began screenshotting every photo, every listing, every edited frame. And then, almost without thinking, I opened my email and attached them all to a blank message. Subject line, proof. I hit send. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the wind to make my ears sting. Long enough for the weight in my chest to settle into something solid. It wasn't sadness. It was resolve. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number. Naomi Sanders, former estate attorney. Smart. Discreet. I hit call. Naomi speaking. It's Sienna. A pause. Well, this is unexpected. I need to ask something. All right. Is RWB Holdings still valid? She went quiet, then cautiously, You're serious? As a snowstorm. A breath on the other end. Yes, it's still registered, but I want that house, I said. Full price, no negotiations. Another pause. No Morgan name, I added. Not even a whisper of it. Naomi didn't ask why. She didn't need to. I'll draft the paperwork, she said softly. As I hung up, I looked back at the house one last time. It sat perfectly still, windows gleaming in late afternoon light, like nothing had ever happened inside. But I knew better, and soon, so would they. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for tax records. It was one of those early spring afternoons where the light slants in through dusty windows and makes everything feel slower. My studio smelled like cedar glue and old ambition. The shelves were cluttered again. Too many projects, not enough bins. I'd told myself for weeks I needed to get organized. So I dragged out the storage crates I'd stuffed under my drafting table. They were labeled in Sharpie. 2016 receipts, college stuff, MISC. And then there was one I hadn't touched in years. Past. I popped the lid. Inside, rejection letters, early sketches, faded report cards, and tucked between a brochure from some forgotten art fair and a packet of old bills was an ivory envelope. It was heavy, textured, the kind of paper that costs more than it should. The return address caught my breath. National Foundation for Emerging Creators. I sat down on the floor. My fingers slipped under the flap. Inside was a folded letter, still crisp, like it had been waiting. Dear Miss Sienna Morgan, we are thrilled to inform you that you have been selected for the 2015 Global Sustainability Fellowship. I didn't read the rest at first. I just stared at those words. Full scholarship, international mentorship, seed funding for a design startup, and I never knew. I blinked, then reread it, again and again. The year, 2015. I was 17, senior year. I remembered the contest vaguely, submitting a bookshelf design built from salvaged barn wood, staying up all night sanding warped planks, using the old saw Grandpa left in the garage. I mailed it myself, waited for weeks, and nothing came. Back then, I asked Mom if she'd seen anything in the mail. She said, "You did your best. Some things just aren't meant for you." But it was meant for me. She just didn't want me to have it. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. My hands began to tremble, slow and deep, like my body was catching up to something my mind already knew. I sat there for a long time. Then the door creaked. Jade walked in holding a brown paper bag and 2 Thai iced teas. "Before you say no," she called, "they gave us extra peanut sauce and I already started eating your egg rolls in the car." She spotted me on the floor and froze. "Okay, what's going on?" I held up the letter. She took it carefully, read silently. Her face went from curious to pale to stormy in under a minute. "They didn't just forget you," she said. "They sabotaged you." I nodded. "They stole your future. Not figuratively, not emotionally, literally." "I know." She sat beside me, crisscross on the hardwood, the bag of food forgotten. "You okay?" I looked down at my hands. I feel like I found a gravestone with my name on it. She didn't answer that. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached over and took my hand. "So," she said after a pause, "what now?" I didn't respond. I stood slowly, walked to my work table, and pulled a fresh sheet of paper from the sketch pad. My hands still shook, but the lines came anyway. I drew a woman, shoulders hunched, mouth sewn shut with thread. Not blood, not horror, just thread. Delicate, restraining. Her eyes, though, were wide, watching, unflinching. I didn't sketch for pretty, I sketched for truth. I titled it, The Silenced. Jade came over quietly and stared at it for a long while. Then she asked, voice low, "You still want to stay quiet?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "We're going to buy it back." Her eyes met mine. "And then?" I turned to the window, light pouring across the dusty floor. "Then we build." The first time I stepped back into the house, I was alone. There were no lawyers this time, no signatures demanded, no eyes watching, just me and the creak of the hardwood beneath my boots. The lock clicked behind me like a sigh. I stood in the entryway, still and quiet, and looked around. Empty. They'd cleared out everything, photos, furniture, the rug. Evelyn always said she hated but never removed. I walked through each room as if I were meeting it for the first time, not as a daughter, as a stranger reclaiming something that never truly belonged to her. In the kitchen, I knelt down and pressed my palm against the pantry baseboard. I felt the groove before I saw it. My initials, SM, carved at 17 with a dull box cutter and a burst of defiance. Still there. At 30, I touched that mark again and smiled. The walls had been scrubbed clean. That suited me just fine. I didn't come to revive memories. I came to build something new. We started with paint. Cool, neutral tones. Jade called them quietly defiant. The gold-framed family portraits were replaced with rough-textured canvases. Every chandelier was removed and replaced with installations made from salvaged metal, driftwood, broken glass. Each room became something else entirely. One was called The Silenced, the piece I'd drawn the night I found the letter. Suspended in the center under soft amber light, the sculpture stood tall. A woman with thread across her mouth, eyes lit from within. People stopped there the longest. Another room we named Legacy Cut. It held a row of school ribbons, sliced in half and framed like artifacts. Below them, a looping video projection played home movies with one face blurred. Mine. Then came Room Without a Name. Empty. Just a single chair in the middle, facing a wall of mirrors. Julian visited midway through renovations. He walked through slowly, hands behind his back, nodding, then finally turned to me. "Don't do a press release," he said. "Don't announce anything." I raised an eyebrow. "Just open the doors?" He smiled. "Let them come looking. Let the silence speak first." So we did. Jade worked tirelessly on permits, artist contracts, lighting systems. She buzzed through the house like a conductor, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other. Naomi helped us finalize the paperwork. Everything under RWB Holdings. No Morgan name attached, no trail. When the time came to open, I didn't cut a ribbon. I didn't post a selfie or a press statement. Just one photo. The front door, repainted charcoal gray. Simple. Centered, and below it the caption, "The place they erased me. Now it's where I exist fully." That was it, and it was enough. The first week, a few curious neighbors wandered in. Art students, retirees walking their dogs. They whispered as they moved from room to room. Some stayed hours, some left and returned again. One afternoon, a college student came in with her mother. I watched from a distance as they stood in front of Room Without a Name. The younger woman wept. Her mother reached for her hand. They stood like that for a long time. Later that evening, I saw the video on my phone. She'd filmed herself in tears, walking through the house. The caption read, "I brought my mom. We haven't spoken in 3 years. She held my hand the whole time." It spread quickly, faster than I expected. By the weekend, the inbox was full. Inquiries, journalists, a request from a local radio host. Julian forwarded me a list of press hits. "You've started something," he said. And then, late Sunday morning, Jade walked in holding her phone like it was made of glass. Her face was a mix of disbelief and anticipation. "They're coming," she said. "Who?" "Vanessa, Evelyn, and I'm guessing your father." I didn't ask how she knew. Jade always knew. I stood in the hallway between Legacy Cut and The Silenced and looked toward the front door. I felt no panic, no dread, just a quiet hum inside my ribs, the same hum that follows the final brushstroke on a canvas or the last weld on a frame, because this place wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine, and they were about to walk through it. I didn't need them to show up. I didn't plan this for them. But deep down, I always knew. They had a habit of appearing when something wasn't about them. Like moths circling a flame they never lit, but still expected to warm them. The gallery hummed with soft conversation. People moved slowly from piece to piece, lingering by the installations as if absorbing memory through their skin. It was early spring, but the windows fogged slightly from breath and body heat, adding a strange intimacy to the space. I kept my distance. Jade floated nearby, clipboard in one hand, earpiece in the other. Julian stood closer to the main room, calmly navigating press inquiries and camera crews with the poise of a man who'd done this dance before. The installation titled Burden/Branded caught the most attention. It hung in the center of the gallery beneath a skylight. From a distance, it looked like a chandelier made of scorched glass and rusted steel. But up close, you could make out what it truly was. The Disownment papers melted and encased in glass, preserved forever inside a steel frame. Faintly, if you looked long enough, you could see the Morgan family crest etched into the lower left corner. People stared, whispered. One man muttered, "Is this real?" Someone answered, "It has to be." Who would fake something like that? I kept walking, greeted a few guests, accepted a glass of sparkling water from a woman who'd flown in from San Francisco after seeing the viral student video. That's when I heard them. Clicking heels, measured steps, the sudden hush of a space adjusting to new tension. I didn't have to turn. Vanessa's voice cut through the quiet like brittle porcelain. Well, you've certainly made your little statement. I turned slowly. She stood near the main installation, jaw set, lips tight. Evelyn was behind her, wrapped in a gray wool coat, hands clutched tightly around her bag. Richard trailed slightly behind, his face unreadable, eyes scanning everything like it was a spreadsheet he couldn't balance. I offered nothing. Vanessa stepped closer, ignoring the small crowd gathering. The camera crews took notice. So did the guests. "I hope you're proud," she said, her voice sharp. "Exploiting pain, turning your petty little resentments into a circus." I said nothing. She gestured to the Disownment sculpture behind me. "You think this is justice?" A woman nearby gasped. Someone raised their phone. The air shifted, tight, electric. Vanessa's voice grew louder. "You were always the burden, Sienna, the needy one, the emotional one. Nothing was ever enough for you." I didn't flinch. Instead, I stepped to the side, revealing the placard beside the installation. Burden branded. Her words had already been anticipated, preserved. The gallery was silent. I looked at her, then at Evelyn, then Richard, and I spoke, calm and steady. "Memory doesn't need your permission." Evelyn blinked. Once, twice. Her hand tightened around her bag, but she said nothing. Richard opened his mouth, then closed it again. He stared at the sculpture, then at me. Vanessa was still fuming, but her anger didn't land anymore. It hovered, uninvited, unreceived. The room exhaled. People turned back to the art. Some shook their heads, others whispered to each other. A woman pressed her hand to her chest, and just like that, the moment passed. Vanessa spun on her heel and stormed out. Evelyn followed, slower, her steps heavy. Richard lingered a beat longer, then walked out, without a word. Julian approached quietly. "You handled that beautifully," he said. I nodded once. "Let the gallery speak." He smiled. It did. That night, after the crowd had thinned and the lights dimmed, I sat in the archive room alone, the place where we'd hung pieces that never got displayed during family holidays, the school awards they never framed, the art pieces they forgot in the basement. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Vanessa's freaking out. Evelyn hasn't spoken since. Richard wants a meeting." I stared at it for a long time. No reply. Some truths don't need to be answered. They just need to be witnessed. And tonight, the world had seen it. They thought they stripped me of everything. But really, they just cleared the space I needed to rebuild. It was late spring when Phoenix Mobility launched, not with confetti or a red ribbon, but with sunlight slanting across the reclaimed floors of the old Morgan dealership. No press, no cameras. Just a group of students from the community program adjusting display screens, while Derek handed out breakfast sandwiches and jokes in equal measure. We'd turned the showroom into a hybrid learning center. Solar panels lined the roof. The old service bays became open labs. Lena stopped by quietly that morning. She didn't say much, but she brought a small potted fig tree. "It'll take time," she said softly, "but it'll grow." That was enough. Jade hovered nearby, clipboard still in hand like always, but her expression softer. Julian leaned against the wall, watching the interns with that look of quiet approval only he could wear without sounding smug. No one mentioned the Morgans. No one needed to. They had their own silence to sit with. I only visited the hospital once. Evelyn looked smaller than I remembered. Her posture curled inward, as if her body had finally caught up with the walls she built around herself. Machines beeped softly. The window blinds were half open. She turned her head when I entered, but said nothing, I didn't bring flowers. I brought my voice. You made me invisible, I told her. I made myself undeniable. Then I left. The gallery had its own breath now. People moved through it slowly, deliberately. Children whispered as they touched recycled paper sculptures. Couples lingered in front of the silenced. Teachers brought students. Former classmates walked through and didn't know what to say. That night, I stood alone in the back kiln room. I held a folded replica of the Disownment papers. Not the originals. I'd already melted those into the Burden-branded piece months ago. This copy was for something new. I opened the furnace door. Heat poured out in a gentle wave. I fed the paper into the flame, slow and steady, and watched as it curled, darkened, disappeared. Then I poured the molten glass into a steel mold shaped like a phoenix. Wings spread, rising from a base of scorched earth and fractured mirrors. The next morning, it sat in the gallery's central exhibit, and above it, engraved on the far wall, in clean serif letters, they erased me from their home. So I built one where I never had to ask to belong. It didn't need a frame. It was the frame. Later that week, while guiding a class of 5th graders through the sculpture wing, a little girl tugged on my sleeve. "Did you really make all this?" she asked. I looked down at her. Wide eyes, hair in soft braids, hands still dusted with charcoal from the interactive corner. "I did," I said, "from everything they threw away." She nodded, as if that made perfect sense. We walked on. Outside, spring was unfolding in full. The fig tree Lena gave me had sprouted its first set of wide green leaves. The interns laughed over burritos under the awning. Jade called out something sarcastic from her corner office. Julian sipped coffee like he'd known all along. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I was just living. They had tried to write my ending years ago, but I'd taken the pen back. There was a time I thought belonging came from being invited in. Now I know. Some homes you have to build yourself, one truth at a time. Sometimes the people who silence you aren't strangers. They're the ones who share your name. But silence can teach you something too, that peace isn't granted, it's made. And when you finally choose to stop asking for love that won't come, you make room for a love that grows on its own terms. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll share your thoughts. Maybe you've walked a quiet road back to yourself too. I'd love to hear how you found home again.